There are 14th Amendment citizens. This is the Constitution.
Listen, the most lawless people of America are in government. Anyone in government who does not uphold the Constitution, both state and federal, are lawless.
My name is Christopher Gronsky. I live in New Hampshire. Live free or die, you know.
He has helped Americans from around the world eliminate their income tax liability through his passport process.
It's like once you see the matrix, you can't unsee it. It's just there, okay?
Always wanting something. Well, welcome to Destination Freedom. We're trying to work out our technological media here. It's kind of fun to watch those past events and fun things we've done together. You know, it's really it's actually great. I love doing all these things with you, Michael. It's awesome. Well, welcome to DestinationFreedom.org. I'm Christopher Gronsky, and I'm really excited about talking about some things tonight. We're doing our broadcast from our studio here in New Hampshire, in the Mill Building in Franklin. So, I want to talk about, I guess the title for this talk is Patriot Myths. That's always an exciting thing to take a look at and think about. Okay. So before I get into some of those particular things that I've talked about over the years, I want to give a little bit about your journey and my journey and how I came about to believe the things that I do and all that. And look, as I share my experience and what I've concluded, I've come to the place to where I believe what I believe, of course, and of course everything I believe is true and accurate and all that, because that's the way it is when what you believe is always the truth. I think of that line from 1776, the musical, which I highly recommend, and where they ask Franklin or John Adams, they say, "Come now, Mr. Adams, are you suggesting that an illegal rebellion is a legal one?" And Franklin steps up and says, gee, Mr. Dickinson, everybody knows that rebellion in the third person, such as their rebellion, is always illegal. It's only in the first person, such as our rebellion, that it's ever legal. So the idea of your journey and what you're learning about yourself, and really that's probably one of the biggest things you're going to be on your freedom journey is you understanding who you are. And when I say that, we're talking about who you are in connection to the Creator and what that means for you. Okay. I've been at this since the 90s. Somebody lovingly sent me a book that changed my world. I would say the only other book that's actually changed my world really is the Bible, and seeing that and developing my relationship with God and the Lord Jesus Christ and practicing my faith and all those things. But the book that was sent to me was this book by Lynn Meredith called Vultures and Eagles Clothing. She has a follow-up book dealing with the IRS, and that's How to Cook a Vulture. And I remember those, reading that and saying, wow, okay, so this is my journey. This is what I was going to do. And as I was moving towards communicating with IRS, they had services available and that you could pay to have people write to the IRS. And they're not writing to the IRS, they're writing me letters, sending them to me so that I could write to the IRS. And I remember that journey, and it was scary. And one of the things that was key that I remember, and that was I didn't understand a particular letter that they sent. I didn't understand what I was really saying. And I remember calling up their office and said, I don't understand this. Can you help me understand? Now, they weren't educating me. I mean, they had the books. And she said, we can't, I'm not going to discuss this and help you understand this. You have to read and look up the statutes and codes. You have to read them for yourself. And truly, that's the way my Bible teacher was. It's like, look, I'm sharing the scriptures. This is what it is. But you have to look up the verses. You have to see if I'm saying what is written. Listen, in the freedom movement, people throw around court cases and things like that. And so I'm going to tell you a little principle that governs, some of these things. All right. And that it is your responsibility to look up things. If you're going to use a court case, if you haven't looked up the court case, read the court case, find the quote that you're quoting from that court case, then you haven't done your due diligence. And listen, I know I'm lazy like the next guy, and you may have people that you trust that they've looked up the court cases and all that. But then again, it's not your proper due diligence, and you have to look up the court cases. Now, here's one of the things that one of my legal friends or colleagues told me about quotations in court cases and legal documents. And I don't know that I can remember this exactly, but it's like this. When you are copying a quotation from something and you paste it into your court case, all right, the style of quotations tells those that are reading it whether you actually looked it up and actually built the quotation or whatever it is. And again, you'll have to check this to confirm this, but it's like this. When the quote, and I don't know, I could be reversing these, but there's the quotations that are curved like this, and then there's quotations that are like almost straight up and down. I don't know which ones they're referring to, but when they see the style of your quotation, they know that you didn't do your due diligence. Interesting. So be sure to properly copy and paste and whatever you're going to do, but make sure you look up your stuff. I know firsthand, dealing with a court case with a particular friend and client, that many times the IRS will use established court cases that they've been using for years, and they don't look up their things, and they're using court cases that don't actually pertain to the situation at hand. There could be similarities, but they're not the same scenario. So you have to look up their statutes and codes if you're going to check them. And some of those things are relevant. Okay. So again, I'm talking about your journey, our journey on this, dealing with liberty and freedom. Now, when I talk about the freedom community, that's all encompassing. Okay. Then there's what I would call, and others call, the truth in taxation. Now, I was part of We the People, which was Bob Schultz's organization. He's out of New York or something, and so he was the founder and was heading up We the People, and I was the New Hampshire state coordinator for that. And like I say in my classes, I was involved in New Hampshire, and we went to Washington, D.C. I got to meet a lot of people. So the tax honesty movement, we call it that. The tax honesty movement was when they were challenging the IRS, whether the income tax is constitutional and things like that. So being a part of that, I began to get to know certain people, and you could learn and see what they're doing. What We the People was doing legally, and they were doing with the former IRS agents, that would be Joe Bannister, Sherry Jackson, John Turner, those former IRS agents, they also were doing their own thing. They believed that the IRS was functioning and was not, really weren't going by what the law says. And look, that's another matter. I never, my IRS stand was based upon that there are two types of citizens in the United States. I know that for a fact. We teach in our classes that there are two types of citizens. How do I know that? Well, because the Constitution in Article 4, Section 2 says the citizens of the states are entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. Before there was a 14th Amendment, 1868, federal citizen subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Before that citizen, there were only state citizens, citizens of the countries or the states in the union. Okay. So that was what I believed, and that's what I was doing. So I wasn't doing what the tax honesty movement was doing. I was just being a part of it. And it was exciting because it was through Lynn Meredith's organization that I got to not physically meet, but got to hire and work with Paul Mitchell, Paul Andrew Mitchell, who wrote the Federal Zone. Now, if you care about the tax honesty or income tax from in your life and things like that, there is no better writing on the subject of the two types of citizens in the United States than Paul Mitchell's work on the Federal Zone. It's just the best. Okay. And so I used his stuff and you can send him support and things like that. We used to hire him and he's written for me before. And the thing I liked about Paul is that he writes very kindly, and he writes kindly with teeth. That's how I like to say it. It's just, he's a powerful writer. It's awesome. So I did that for a number of years. And of course I had him work with me when I was dealing with my bank and the IRS at that time, but I don't have any interaction with IRS these days. But some of the people, when you're looking at these processes, everybody's got to figure out for themselves what they believe and where they're going to be. Okay. One of the things that I have found is I had a mentor, a guy that reached out to me and felt I don't know how he maybe saw my video online, the one where I was, where the interviewer says, Christopher Gronsky from Wolfeboro, New Hampshire. It's Wolfboro, but he says Wolfeboro. I don't even remember when that video, it might have been in 2006 or 4, 6 or somewhere 8. Somewhere in that timeline, I was doing classes and he came in and interviewed some of my students and all that. That video has been around a long time. It's had thousands of views, and I'm a very young man in that video. But I was just teaching what I know and what I believed, and so I started doing a class, our state versus federal citizenship class, which is available online. You can watch it on video. It's available at the DestinationFreedom.org website. But getting back to We the People was, so there were a number of people that I got to meet in Washington and got to learn their stories. Now, there's Irwin Schiff, and he was taking a tax stand. And Irwin is a real fireball. I like that about him. And but he went to prison for a tax-related situation. Of course, died in prison. Sad to say. And so Irwin Schiff did not persuade his jury. Okay. Why is that? Well, because Irwin Schiff is a fireball. He intimidates people. Okay. I mean, my opinion on IRS cases, win and losses, this is what I'm making up about it, but this is what I believe about IRS cases, the ones that win and lose. Nobody wins their IRS case on the merits of their case. Okay. And the way you can tell what I'm saying is true is because you'll find other people who will have the same sentiment, and some will win their case with IRS, with a jury, and some will lose their case. And so when you look at these cases, these national cases and these big cases, like Tommy Cryer was an attorney. Tommy Cryer had an argument that was used before. Okay. And he won his case. Why? Because he's an attorney. He's good at what he says. He's a gentleman. He's passed away now, or was killed. I don't know which one, but anyway, he won because he won his jury. The one that was the FedEx pilot, if I remember correctly, and she has a wonderful story. I was in Washington and heard one of her jurors talk about it. And I remember her talking about with her attorney that she was going to pray for the jury, that it was going to be positive. She wasn't going to be afraid. She had a great attitude. Well, one of the jurors was enough to have her be acquitted. And she was saying the judge promised to show them the law that most people, what is the law that requires most people to file and pay income taxes? That's a very common belief out there, is show me the law that requires most people to file and pay. And it's interesting that the government doesn't just step up and show the law. And the reason that in my humble opinion, the reason they don't show the law is because if you knew the law that requires most people to file and pay, you'd be surprised at what that is. Okay. And so so anyway, so getting into some of that was, like you had Irwin Schiff. And then how about, let me see if I can find another one here in my stack of things. Let me see. Oh yeah, here you go. And then here's Joe Bannister has a wonderful report here. Now, Joe Bannister is a former IRS agent, and he won in his case because he's a very sweet man. He speaks really well, and he persuaded his jury in the same way. But he ended up resigning with IRS. He asked them questions, and they didn't want to answer his questions, and so consequently, they said, we're going to answer your questions, but we want you to resign, if you will. And so he consequently had to resign. Now, Sherry Jackson had a belief about it, and so she was helping people, and she went to prison for what she was dealing with. Another gentleman, I could be mistaken. So I want to say like Paul Hansen. Anyway, the gentleman who has gotten IRS things back for money back from IRS by filling out returns in a certain way, and there have been successes in that, but not everyone in that situation. Now, many people like Irwin Schiff, when one of his followers was a man in New Hampshire, his name was Steve Swan. Now, Steve Swan went to prison for IRS related things, and when I talked to Irwin Schiff about Stephen Swan, Irwin Schiff said that Stephen was, he recognized him as one of his students and all, but he wasn't doing what Irwin Schiff says he should be doing. And consequently, he went to prison as well. And then someone famous, I just to throw this out there, just with people that I know is, well, I've met and had at our house Larkin Rose, and Larkin Rose had the 861 argument. And when looking at the 861 argument, one of the things that we teach in our classes is to look at the words that the IRS is using, right from the definitions that are in the tax code. We use the tax code. And so I remember reaching out to Larkin Rose. Now, Larkin Rose is very popular, and he's a bigwig in the freedom movement. He's a teacher. I would say that Larkin Rose in the freedom community is probably one of our best philosophers about the principles of freedom and things like that. Larkin wrote the screenplay, and the film. What is it? It's I'll think of it in a second. Is the Jones Plantation. If you haven't seen the Jones Plantation, I highly recommend it. Michael, we should do like a Jones Plantation review and talk about that, because the work that we do is in essence like the Jones Plantation type stuff, where people are, we're inviting people out of that. So another freedom guy is Dave Champion. He believes certain things about the IRS that you can look up and all that stuff. And then there's the SEDM website, SEDM, Fam Guardian. It's the same gentleman out there. I won't say his name because he cares about his privacy. But anyway, he has an exhaustive website of which it was out there. And one day I'm sitting in my office, and he calls me on my cell phone, the guy that writes this website. And I know of his website. And I remember that conversation. I was really honored that he was actually calling me. And I care about my privacy, but I got so much stuff out there. It's very easy to reach out and connect with me because I got phone numbers and emails and things like that. And I'm definitely available for people to reach. Anyway, he called me up and he asked me why I didn't have any links to his website on my website. And I said, because um, I don't find that they're accurate, and he was really bothered because he cares about his accuracy on his website. And I remember looking at some things that I was commenting, and so he added me to his website. And of course, he didn't want to misrepresent me. And he's a delightful, passionate freedom man, as well as Christian, and so that was it was wonderful to talk with him. And so now we connect on our phones and all that stuff. And I love that interaction. I never want to demonize anybody in the movement, even if I don't agree with their sentiment or what they do. Um, Getting to know, I'm just going to run through some of these books as a reference. If you haven't read some of these books, I highly recommend it. Here, this is a famous one. This Creature from Jekyll Island, written by G. Edward Griffin. This guy is the top of his field. He is an expert in dealing with the Federal Reserve, the Illuminati, central bankers, that whole thing. He's a master author of that. And he's Red Pill University. He's got his own work. One of the things that he set up was the Red Zone. Maybe I'm saying that wrong, but he has a worldwide organization. And I hope I'm not going to space this in here. The organization is, it'll come to me. I don't think it's probably on here. Yeah, it'll come to me. Anyway, I'm the New Hampshire president of the organization that I'm spacing. I'll get it in a second. It's going to come to my head. And I have a blank. Anyway, that does happen. Anyway, so Freedom Force International. That's what it is. Freedom Force International. Anyway, so so that organization I've been supporting for a number of years, and I met Ed Griffin in Washington, and not that we're buddies and all that stuff, but again, he's a mover and shaker in this field. Another, I'm just going to see anything else. One of the things that organizations I was part of was the John Birch Society. And I was a county, I was I headed up. Whenever I join an organization, I'm not ever a spectator. I always get involved, get committed, and all that. But I was the head of my particular group that we were putting together. And one of the reasons that and listen, there's no organization that's on they'll recognize Ed Griffin all the time because they're dealing with that Illuminati, central bankers, Council on Foreign Relations, all about that world, global type control. They are spot on with that. Now, there were two reasons that I stopped being a part of the John Birch Society, and it's just me. Nothing. They're doing their thing, which is fine. One of them was they had a publication that was from I don't know who wrote this, whether this was I guess it's just one of the leaders. This wasn't Robert Welch, but anyway, tangents. And so they felt that one of the tangents that they list in here, if I have it here, was income tax rebellion. So they thought these old fucks that were part of the organization. Now I say that because that's what they were, a bunch of old people that were holding on to these organizations. They are all on Social Security and all that. So of course they're not going to do tax rebellion because they're on the nipple of the federal government. So of course it's a tangent to our big cause of rooting out the communists. So that was the other reason that I didn't want to be a part of it anymore, because they were not bringing young people into their organization. So that's sad, but that's the reality of it. And of course, some of the tangents are great as far as tangents go. But if you're still, if you think that the strategy or that the battle out there, the real battle between good and evil out there is between Democrats and Republicans, you're a fool. Okay, You're a fool if you think that. Okay. And I'm on this broadcast. I'm not against Donald Trump per se. Okay. But I never voted for him. I can't vote for him. And I'm seeing that he's a kindler, gentler tyrant. Okay. And so he favors the Republican side, which is the way we're swinging to the right now. And as soon as that shit gets bad enough, we're just going to swing back to the left. And I'm going to make up that if the Democrats get their head out of their ass, they're probably going to come up with a liberal conservative who's going to be, like they always do, more middle of the road, and that's going to be what's going to draw in all those liberals that end up voting for Trump because they couldn't stand Hillary and all that crap. So anyway, that's what's going to happen. Why? Because that's what has been happening for years. Why would they change the plan that's working where the two-headed snake, that eats people is there? So anyway, so that's why I moved away from John Birch Society. And so, and if that's part of your journey, that's great. The another area that people, when they talk about income tax and all this, is the people that believe that the 16th Amendment was not properly ratified. And of course, this book called The Law That Never Was, this I love. This was Bill Benson is the author. I believe Bill's passed away, and but this is the facts and evidence that supports that law was never properly ratified. If that's where but there are people in the freedom community that think that alone, and the definition of the term income, it's not income if it's not called income, it's gains and all that. That argument is, as my humble opinion, is also frivolous. I agree with the IRS that it's frivolous, and I'll explain that frivolous stuff in a second. So, and so what happens in those arena of people that believe that about what I'm making, this is not income. I'll even have people reaching out to me wanting to give me money or something, and they'll call it a donation, and so it confuses me, because if someone's giving me a donation, that doesn't mean I have to do anything for them. They're just giving me money. Okay, because I don't ask for. I think we have on our site somewhere where we'll take donations. We'll take donations at any time, but most of the time, if I'm giving money, there's a service I have to render, and I'm okay with that. And so there are people that think that, so I call myself, like when I'm receiving money, if I call it something else, then it somehow is okay. That I put in the category of running, hiding, sneaking, things like that. So anyway, I was walking into talking about was someone that I knew when I was younger in high school, and that was Wesley Snipes. And he was following Larkin Rose's, not Larkin Rose stuff, but that 861 argument and things like that. And he also went to prison. Now, I did reach out to his attorney to help him. And the attorney determined that they didn't need any help. And of course, he went to prison for that. That was sad, but the case, And so people are all over the place with respect to IRS. Now, just for the record, just so that you understand, and maybe I'll explain later, or maybe you already know, but I want you to know that what we teach about who has an income tax liability, and that is, I say what the IRS says: all U.S. citizens, regardless of where they live, and resident aliens have an income tax liability and are required by law to file and pay. Okay, that's what I teach in my classes. So, but and we'll talk about that later. But the idea is that people, there are things that the IRS says that are frivolous, and it is frivolous for taxpayers to say that they are federal, that they're not a federal citizen, and that they, that they're a state citizen, and things like that. Those things are frivolous for taxpayers. So if you're a taxpayer, you can't make those arguments, because the court's going to determine that is frivolous. So there's a number of things. One of the things that a group that's out there also is Freedom Law School. Now, that's made up of a gentleman. His name is Paymont, and he also was part of We the People. And I met him in Washington, and I've seen him a number of times. He's come to New Hampshire, and we've been in this journey at the same time with different clients and such. Now, when you listen to Paymon, he always is saying, he's always saying how evil the IRS is and all that stuff. One of the filters that I check when I want to find out if people understand uh, this tax honesty or taxes in general in the IRS is I ask them, I say, do you believe that the federal income tax is constitutional? And generally speaking, most people will say, no, they don't believe it's constitutional. And then that's when I say, well, okay, well, then you don't understand federal jurisdiction. You don't understand how the Constitution empowers the federal government to do exactly what it's doing. And that place in the Constitution, this is the law of the land. So if all those people who want to know what is the law that requires most people to file and pay income tax, that would be Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. That part of the Constitution gives the federal government exclusive legislative authority in all cases whatsoever in that 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. That would include Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, America Samoa. They have exclusive legislative authority in all cases whatsoever. So they're not limited by the Constitution in their jurisdiction. And another thing that's in their jurisdiction is that 14th Amendment federal citizen that is subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That citizen, that's the U.S. citizen. That citizen is how the U.S. State Department defines U.S. citizenship by the 14th Amendment. The IRS defines U.S. citizenship by the 14th Amendment. That citizen has an income tax liability and is required to file and pay worldwide. And of course, also the resident alien. So now, and we teach this in our classes. We show you this from the tax code so you can see it. The question is, are you a United States citizen or are you a 14th Amendment citizen? And it is going to depend upon that definition of the term United States. Now, so I just wanted to give that kind of background, but this is what I've been exposed to over the years as I was moving down the pathway of determining what I'm going to believe and what action I'm going to take. And again, like I said before, I've had great mentors who have helped me along the way, and they were not my buddies, A mentor is not it shouldn't be your buddy. Mentor is someone that you look up to that is functioning by certain principles. They would be a master, if you will, at whatever they do. But I remember this gentleman that his name was Mark. I'm spacing his last name, but he reached out to me one time, and I remember him talking to me, and he said that this is kind of weird, but he said that God told him he had to give me a whole bunch of evidence, that what I was saying and doing was good, but I needed more facts and evidence. And I was on Skype with him and another guy, and he was sharing all this information, and man, that was grueling. Because he would be asking me, you know why I said this? You know why I said this? I was like, no, but I'm sure you're going to tell me, could you just do a data dump so I can get all these documents that you had? No, but he was teaching, showing me. He was the one that said to me that he says what they say. And he says that if you're asserting something to be true, then you're the one that has to support it with facts and evidence. You don't have to disprove anything. The ones that are alleging something to be true, they have the obligation to prove. You don't have to disprove anybody. Anybody can say anything and it doesn't matter. But if you're going to back it up with facts and evidence, then that's going to stand and certainly would stand in a court of law. And so that's been a huge thing. Two things is where I move towards how we function with clients and what we offer, and the remedies that we come up are remedies that we practice ourselves and that we can prove. Okay. The other thing is, as a principle, is I certainly don't want to harm anybody with the information that we have, but things that we can prove. Now, I am Christian. That doesn't tell you anything. I believe that the Bible is my only rule of faith and practice. The Bible for me is the Word of God. And so, and I'm not talking about any version of the Bible because I'm a strong student of the scriptures, and I study the scriptures like it's an archaeological dig. You have to be careful. You're looking at things, you're cross-referencing, you're looking at words in different languages and all that kind of thing. Not I'm reading a commentary on so someone can tell me what they think about it. That's not the way I have been trained to look into scripture as a student. Okay. So I took that same training that I had from the scriptures and I just moved it into looking at statute and code and things like that. So in looking at, what I can prove, that was one standard. Now, when I say that I'm a Christian, the reason I was saying that is because I have a faith-based belief system associated with my faith or my Christian walk. Okay. If you were going to say, oh, well, then prove to me, that's what you say, you only promote things you can prove. And so that standard doesn't go with my faith-based belief system. Okay. It's faith-based. It's not based upon facts and evidence. Facts are things that change or things that I can prove, if you will. It's faith-based. One of the things that we're going to talk about later on is straw man type of things or the redemption process type things. And that too is a faith-based belief system. Okay. And we'll talk about that later. So as we get into talking about some of these other things, and I'm uncomfortable, bringing up these other people's names because I don't like to speak ill of them, and I certainly will not speak ill of their character. Okay, because people make up their mind with what they're going to believe, and it's unfortunate, okay, that you get to make up your mind too. I have known a handful of people that would love for me to be around a table with other big guys so that we can duke it out or whatever, or debate, and things like that. And then that makes it very easy for people to make a choice because they get to see people hammered out. But you see, that's not what usually happens. And I don't mind talking to anybody. But what happens is the work that has to be done, you have to do the work in your own heart to end up where you are and what you believe. And yes, you have to pay the price, could be monetarily, or take the time and effort to listen to people so that you can see what resonates for you and what, what's the path that you may go. And look, all of us have invested a certain amount of money in certain things. And maybe it didn't plan out very well, but it's definitely brought you to where you are. So it's not like a bad thing. And we've had a lot of people come from a lot of different groups out there. Unfortunately, that's just the journey. And so one of the things that we're offering is two things. One is that we're very connected to our clients. There's a lot of hand holding, talking on the phone. We're building community. And so we're very reachable for people. It isn't that we just stick people over here. And one of the things that we don't do, which this came up in that Grok thing, is I don't educate the public. Now I'm sharing all the time, straight up what I do, what I believe, what I'm saying. I have talks. I talk freely on the phone with people. I'm always educating that way, but we don't set up for the general public, and certainly not for those who have income tax liabilities and are educating the public. We don't do that. This is private. Everybody that we educate is part of our community and is a client. And so those are the only people that we educate. So we're not out there trying to, there are people that come along and say that I should give away the hard work that I've put together to put all this work as a teacher together. They think I have an obligation to give this away to cheap bastards like them and I usually ask them, what do you do for a living that you give away? And of course, that makes them mad. Then, of course, if I'm a Christian, because I'm a Christian, of course, I should be giving away the truth and all. And I speak the truth all the time. But as Jesus Christ says, a workman is worthy of his hire. Okay. And so, we've got a lot invested in serving people. And so, we get a return on that investment. For the most part, when you think about it, they're not as outraged as paying into the pedophiles and paying into the deep state, paying into the central bankers, 25, 30% of their living. They're not outraged by that. Michael, what did they do 250 years ago when the king was asking for too much money? what did they do back then? Did they write them letters? No, no. They said, we'll see you in the village green. They declared their truth and said, this is the way it is. We're not asking, we're saying this is the way it is. That's the Declaration of Independence. And if they didn't like it, we're going to defend ourselves by force. We'll see you in the village green. And see, so we're long overdue for that. I mean, it was years ago, my son was saying, when are we going to take a stand? And, we're long overdue for it. History shows we're long overdue for that. But if we can't even write paperwork and do an administrative remedy, are we really going to be prepared for that? I don't think so. I don't think our heart's in it that way. And I think, what is the level of tyranny that American people will give up, will put up with? It's bad, folks. Really bad. It's, like Frederick Douglass says, he says, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Find out what people will submit to, and you'll have found the exact amount of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue until they're resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those in whom they oppress. I mean, that's describing today in a nutshell. So unfortunately, that is the gig, So we're dealing with patriot myths today, and I want to handle some of those that are very popular today. So everybody wants to stop filing and paying income tax and all that. And so some people are talking about. Let me talk about one of the most popular beliefs that are out there, and that is what they call. We've got a number of books on these, but I remember this is one of them by Aaron Coates. OMO, One Man Out. And of course, this is talking about, in this particular book, they're talking about what they call the redemption process. Okay. Now that belief, what we call straw man and all that, is that they believe that when you're born, a birth certificate is created. And so it's set up and it identifies you. You can see these videos. I've seen them on TikTok or Reel or whatever it is. So they're saying, like, when they're born, the central bankers, they monetize that certificate against the future taxes that they would pay and all that. And so then they monetize it and they sell it and it's worth a certain value. And it's basically they're describing as if, you're setting up a slavery here. Now, I want to handle that concept by itself. Okay. And again, facts and evidence have to be supported. Now, when I'm going to pop holes in that, I'm going to pop holes on it from a place of principle. Okay. So just because, let me say the principle is this. Here's the principle that I always declare with respect to that concept. And it's this. No one is obligated to fulfill any contract or agreement that's without their knowledge or against their will. Let me say it again. No one is obligated to fulfill any contract or agreement that's without their knowledge or against their will. What does that mean? No one can sneak up on you and contract with you. There's no such thing as that. Listen, of course you can trick people, but when you trick people, it's called fraud and therefore doesn't create a valid contract. No one can have a valid contract with you when they're tricking you into it, okay? Here's another principle that's out there. And what a sad place. Because the people who believe that when you set up a birth certificate, that there's an obligation that you have something that you have to undo, okay, for the child, okay? Well, here's a principle, okay? Listen, allegedly, just in case you didn't know this, but that slavery is illegal. Let me suggest this. Slavery is illegal in every jurisdiction. Now, was there a time when slavery was legal? Absolutely. And was it wrong back then? Yes, it's always been wrong. Okay. Now, slavery is legal in the United States, the states. It is legal. Okay. As long as the person who is being enslaved or, is being setting up for involuntary servitude, they have to be duly convicted of a crime. Okay. Maybe that's a problem. But that is what the 13th Amendment says. So that's the exception to that slavery and involuntary servitude is illegal in the states. It doesn't say that it's illegal in the District of Columbia, but it's another matter. But maybe that's the way it was written that way. But anyway, slavery is when they're controlling you, your body. Involuntary servitude is where they're benefiting. They may not control your body, but that they're taking the fruit, some or all of the fruit of your labor from you. Okay, they're benefiting from the fruit, and you're not getting that part. And many people would put the income tax in that category of involuntary servitude. Now, if the federal government is actually violating your rights, listen, how many here would believe that the fruit of your labor is your right? Okay. Now, and so does the income tax violate your rights? Now, most would say that it does. I say it does not violate your rights. Another quote that I have out there right now is, because I have to deal with this stuff all the time that we have out there, is when you no one's rights are being violated when you obey government, because you're choosing to obey. Okay. It's only when you disobey government that you're going to find out if your rights are going to be violated or not. That again is a principle. Okay. If you have a choice. So if you don't have a choice to not pay the income tax, by the way, the Supreme Court has said that it's an excise tax, which tells you there's a choice somewhere. You can choose not to receive the benefit, whatever that may be. You'd have to look and examine that. Okay. But so how is the income tax a choice? Well, not the tax. The income tax, all taxes are collected under pain of death and are obligations that are imposed. So I'm not talking about the taxes. I'm saying the choice is whether you want to be a U.S. federal citizen or not. Okay. A 14th Amendment citizen. That's your choice. If you choose on paper, not only with IRS, but with the driver's license, voting, jury duty, if you're always saying yes to the question, are you a United States citizen, then you are saying that's the privilege that you want, that 14th Amendment citizen subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and that is what's creating your income tax liability. Do you understand? That's your choice. And so that's what we help people, is to make a different choice, and we do that choice with U.S. State Department when we do the passport process. So that understanding that is a huge thing. And so this is why I say that the income tax is constitutional, because this power of writing Title 26 and all of the Code of Federal Regulations falls under the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Now, there are things in Section 8 that are other places in law in which the Constitution is empowering, like the title that deals with the post office. The Constitution empowers the federal government to do postal roads and post office, okay? Not the United States Postal Service, but the post office. And so there's codes associated with that. But anyway, so that understanding the Constitution, you're going to understand how the federal government has that power, and they wield it accordingly. The power and the choice is yours, whether you want to be subject to that jurisdiction. Okay. So getting back to the straw man. Okay. It's illegal for parents to sell their children into slavery. And what a dishonorable thing to accuse your parents of putting you or selling you into slavery by getting a birth certificate. Now, some people believe that birth certificate creates that obligation, but let me just say this. Children are minors when they usually get that birth certificate, and as well the Social Security number. You cannot contract with a minor. It's illegal. Not able to. And so parents many times will contract on behalf of their children, and then they become responsible for the choices and the care of children. Any child that's been in Hollywood, that's been violated by pedophiles and sex traffickers in Hollywood, the parents are responsible for putting those children in those places, and they will be held accountable directly to God for the damage that has done, and it's extensive. But again, the parents are involved with that. So when I say, and I went down to the birth certificate location, it's on video, it's on one of our videos. right there on our YouTube channel where we're looking at the birth certificate that we did for my son. And, it's just not there. They explained the 3 numbers that are on there. Now, when I asked the guy that was the steward of all that, uh, was he aware of what people believed that they monetize? I said, do they monetize this? And you know what he said? Here's his answer. You cannot read anything in the statutes and codes that says that the birth certificate does that. Now, there are people that promote that will point to websites, whether governmental or not, and they'll say that they'll show this out here about what they believe about birth certificates. And you can take a look at that for yourself if that's what you want to believe. But they will not be able to produce a contract that obligates the child to anything associated with that. Because these are people that are going after money that's generated by that. So here's their belief that they're conflicted with. They want to go after settling debts with this monetized note. And so I many times years ago, and again, we used to promote this stuff. But then my teacher was saying I have to prove these things, then I went into looking for that evidence and didn't find it. So anyway, getting back to monetizing. So you can't say on one side of this that it creates this benefit over here, and I'm going to use that benefit as a good thing. And then over here, because when I ask him, I say, do you believe that's fraud, that they set this whole thing up? Oh, yeah. And so you're going to benefit from the fraud? It's like, well, yeah. That's where they're at. It's like, I'm on both sides. I want the benefits, but I don't want the responsibilities. Okay. I said, can you point to who the actual people that are participating in this activity that you can name them so you could charge them with fraud? Oh, no, I don't have that. So you don't know anybody. It's the proverbial they're after us. It's a conspiracy that I can't prove. It ends up being a conspiracy theory, In theory, it would be this way. Now, let me say this. Even though I'm shutting that down as a viable thing, does not mean that governments all over aren't monetizing everything that moves. They do. This money system out there, central bank fiat currency and all that, is atrocious. It's evil. It is, in my opinion, as the scripture says, the love of money is the root of all evil. Okay. And so this is the root, these tools, if you will, is the root of all evil, the love of it at least. And it could be the love of what it gets you. It is bad. And we're going to go longer, by the way, than the hour, but not much longer. But anyway, so just because I'm saying that this, all I'm dealing with is that you have no obligation to undo anything with respect to that, because of course you were a child. I have a birth certificate that I've gotten from Pennsylvania, but I don't have anything to do with that state. Had anything to do with being born in that state. Now, the state that you're born in is your nativity or your nationality. Okay. And some people think that you have to undo this by going back to the state. And then a lot of times people will conflict citizen and nationality. They'll think they're the same or whatever. And then there's people that believe that if you're a citizen, then you're subject to government. I never made any such agreement. When I use the word citizen, this is how I use it. Okay. When I use the word citizen, I mean participant. I'm a citizen of New Hampshire. I care about what's going on in New Hampshire. I'm not a citizen of California. I can't completely say I don't care what goes on in California, because we have clients in California. California is lovely. It's a wonderful part of America. I mean, so I can't just write off California, but hey, I'm writing off California and their government and their people that want that crap. What they do, I don't care about New York, that state of New York or Illinois or any of these other states that are run by communist governments in their capitals and in their major cities. It's always the same socialist, communist crap. So New Hampshire's small. I love New Hampshire. I'm at stake for them. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. But I know who's in my town, in my county, state reps and stuff. I am active in those places because, listen, political power is real power. They wield it. If you don't think it's powerful, take a look around you. Okay. And so the only problem in government is typically you don't have moral people in government. And the only purpose of government is to secure rights. So if the one that's in government is only job is to secure rights, if they're doing anything other than that, then they're outside the the power that they've been given, okay, or delegated. Nothing's given; it's just delegated. So that's where some of that is. Then straw man, those remedies, and one of the popular, powerful people out there promoting that and the Restore America is Anna von Wright. And so that's a very popular group. And now that group, that gal, or she's Judge Anna von Wright, whatever her background is. And she's a Christian as well. And I don't share her sentiment with respect to her faith and what she believes about that. Just me. It's not, doesn't make, I don't know the woman. I don't know her character. All I know is the people that have been a part of some of those organizations. And listen, an organization in one place is not the same as an organization in another place. So you can't just write people off. But people are coming from those organizations and coming to ours because we've really mastered this passport process and are dealing with the State Department, things like that. So so this idea of setting up a another form of government, if you will, restoring America. And so they'll create these groups and they believe that this is the right one of this republic and all that. The problem is with that isn't that they're setting it up, okay, but that they're not securing their liberty first. Okay, what does that mean? That means, well, many of them are federal citizens, which is they're still subject to the federal government union. So if they're not going to remedy that, they're pursuing freedom while being enslaved still. That's not really a good position. So that's one thing. The other thing is that they one of the most powerful elected officials in your area, now this isn't everywhere in the world, but at least in America, is your sheriff. So if a group of people coming together can't do the work to elect a constitutional sheriff so they can at least have force on their side, that's a much better strategy to secure first. Okay, so it's nice that you got your groups together, but that's something that's going to be important. Then other people who are heads in these governments that your neighbors are voting for, you want to get into that and bring in people who are knowledgeable and secure. I mean, that's how you're going to secure liberty and freedom. Otherwise, those that are empowering, giving money to, and giving firearms to in these governments, they're going to have their way because they have force. And then they have courts that are going to be enforced by people who have guns. That's how it works. If they had no guns, there'd be no force. They'd have no authority, because that's the only way that a judge can have his ruling, is because he's got force, which is actually the executive branch. That's the force behind what a judge determines is supposed to be constitutional. So it's a common thing. So anyway, I say these things because that's what's going to be involved. A lot of times clients will come to me and they're not even wanting to participate. They don't even know how their form of government works. They don't realize that there's a tool to be wielded. And with your knowledge and your love for freedom, you should be a voice in your local area. Now, you guys know me. I've already written off the central union government. I have nothing to do with it. I don't send people there. I don't promote people there. I have nothing but disdain for them. I would say have the states repeal the federal constitution, send the bastards home. And look, and the states can send their talkers there that have no power, that are going to talk to each other. And listen, governors can get together in the states and talk to each other. It's not a problem. And then you can have different departments come together to talk, but you don't give these people power. The most powerful governments have got to be governments of your town, your neighborhood. Ours should be the most powerful. When you see your neighbor, oh, he's armed, I'm armed. That's the most powerful government. Then the county should be weaker. We might handle certain things, but they handle nothing that's really important than the town handles. Town should be like that. And the state should be even weaker than the county. The county handles more things than the state does. Stop centralizing your power. Every time power goes, and who comes up with centralized power? Criminals set up centralized power. You want decentralized power, constantly decentralized power. That's one thing to Trump's credit. is that he tends, not always, but he tends to decentralize and give things back to the states. That's a good thing. No matter if it's the devil, if the devil promotes the truth, then yeah, that's good. Like I said, the good thing about an asshole is it gets rid of shit. That's a good thing. So the idea of decentralizing power is a good thing. So that's one of those things out there, is the Restore America. And so I'm not a part of that because it's not a good remedy. Is it good to get people to get together? Yes, you should have a freedom. You should have a freedom fellowship every week. That would be a good thing for you. One of the things that's out there that I want to talk about is this idea of a global passport. Listen, there's no such thing as a global passport. There is an organization that will do a global passport, but the federal government and many other governments will not recognize the global passport because there's nobody to recognize. Okay. These governments communicate with each other because governments are sovereign with respect to each other. And then there's honor among thieves. They trust each other because they have treaties with each other. That's the reason why they trust each other. They're giving promises and they're backing with money and force or whatever these treaties. And so they recognize each other's identifications and they have certain standards of how they identify each other. Why? Because they're not trustworthy, and that's why they don't trust. Okay. A global identification is a private ID. And yes, you have the power to identify yourself. Yes, you can come up with your own private ID, and the government will handle that as a private ID. Not too much, okay? Because they trust governments. It's sad to say that, but that's where it is. And unless you overcome that, listen, in the old days before passports, you would have leaders would write a letter and say, here's so-and-so, they're my good friend. Please treat them with all the respect you would do me, blah, blah, blah. They would bring that letter. They would see their seal or their signature, and then they would treat them that way. That's how they did passports, if you will, before there were passports. So it's just a thing out there. So anyway, so that's one of the things that are out there. I'm trying to think if there's any more. Do we have any questions on it? Let me just make sure that I can catch some of these questions on there. If let me see the first one. I did a proper W8 and W9. The bottom one's the first one. Really? They come in from the bottom, huh? All right. No, Michael, the bottom one is, I got it right here. I'm looking at, hold on, 42. Oh yeah, no, I'm looking at the time on. You're right. The one on the top is 7:03. All right, question. I'm waiting on a personal return refund from 2024. Would you suggest it best wait until that refund is received before beginning or? That's a rhetorical question. Let's see. I'm getting some of my money back. Should I begin the process before I get my money back or after? Come on. Don't ask me that question. Well, yeah, get your stinking money back while you're still in those systems. Then jump on it right away. But yeah, don't leave. Don't be overtaxed. Get done with that nonsense and then go to the DestinationFreedom.org website and get done with it. Yeah, anytime you can hold on to that money. After you submit documents to the State Department, that'll be a game changer because we don't promote or suggest anyone lie. And if you're doing documents under penalty of perjury, always tell the truth. Then here's Jed. Hey, Jed, thanks for being on. Although this is how it really is, state citizenship doesn't work, sadly, in states that have personal income tax. They'll just ignore it, call it frivolous, railroad you while you pick up. Well, Jed, I don't have that experience, okay? All of our clients that are in states all over America that don't have state income taxes, none of them file or pay. So yeah, it does work, but you have to know how to have it work. So if you don't, just not paying, if you're, listen, if you, here's the answer. Just look up the statutes and codes that governs income tax. Look at the forms that the state has you fill out. They begin it with the obligation of the federal. If you have a federal income tax liability, a state that has an income tax begins there. And so, yes, so if you're a federal citizen, you'll be taxed federally and you'll be taxed in a state that has an income tax. And so that's the beginning. So if you don't have a federal income tax liability, you won't have a state income tax liability always. And listen, it's only frivolous for taxpayers. If you're a taxpayer, then it'll be frivolous. You're right. But if you're not a taxpayer, you won't. And we'll help you so that you don't have to feel railroaded. There's no railroading. It's just paperwork. That's all. You don't have to feel railroaded, but you will not be an employee. You will not take a tax stand while being an employee. If you're employed, then you have to be done with that. Reach out to us. We'll help you start your business as a freelancer, or we'll help you start the business you've always dreamed. The beauty about starting your own business is not starting a company, a corporation. We're just talking how you're doing your busyness, okay? How you're doing your work. We'll show you exactly how to get set up with that so you can get going with that. Because the best part about that is you get to now determine how much you work, how much you do with your time, and how much you get paid. You don't have to ask somebody else, how much are you willing to pay me? You don't have to do that. The guy that's mowing your yard doesn't come up and say, how much do you want to pay me for mowing your yard? Oh, $3. Sorry, that's not what I do. No, they come up and they say, how much will you charge me to mow my yard? That's you telling them how much you want to get paid. That's the beauty of working for other people, So, and then there's Stephen here. He says, I did proper W-8W9, received a payment less than 10% for the Fed withholding. Is there a remedy to get that 10% back? Yeah, you should have been on it before see. Again, if you the reason that they sent the IRS 10% is you allowed them to send 10%, because if you filled out an improper W-9 or you gave them a different W-9 in which they have your social security number, then they can only withhold by your permission. They cannot legally withhold without your permission. It's stealing. And so your recourse would be to sue them. But again, you'd have to look at how you're communicating with them. I would say your W-8, W-9 is fine, but you have to learn how to talk with people and how to deal with them so that you can make sure that they're not going to give away your money. There was a time, I think of one time, I was cleaning glass for a company, and we gave them my W-8, W-9, and we talked about them and all that. They didn't want to read or understand. They were just afraid and ignorant. Okay. And so they took 10%. I remember it was like $300, and they sent it to the IRS. And so now we still made profit because, we're not so close to the margins, but the bottom line is I dropped them as a client because I'm not going to put up with that. Now, is it worth $300 of my time to go sue them? No, it's just a loss. Don't want to deal business with them anymore. I've never had anybody ever do that in the past or, ever since then. So, and again, you can learn how to support and deal with the clients. Now, what I've done for many clients is that I have talked with comptrollers, accountants, tax attorneys, and let them know that what you're doing is right. And so was that our W-8, W-9 or was that your own, or did you create something like that? Or because if you had that happen before, I'd like to talk to you and see about how we can help you and support you in that. So, but anyway, that's how that stuff works. Just want to let you know. We have those. Well, do we have any other questions? Was there anything on those other platforms, the TikTok or anything? Okay, cool. All right. Oh, we got some of this. Hey, Jed, let's see here. It's not me. It's the state lawyers that don't want to hear it. So you dealt with the lawyers, okay? As I know that all this, well-versed, been off since 2001. That's good. You have a remedy. How much do you charge to get this cease and desist? Okay, well, yeah, so I'm of course I'm not going to handle your personal stuff right here on the YouTube channel here, but what I would suggest, Jed, is just reach out to us at State Citizen at DestinationFreedom.org and go to the Destination Freedom website. And so on there, you can reach out and give me your contact information and your phone number, and I'll reach out. We'll talk on the phone and we'll see what happened and what you had set up, and be glad to take a look at that and see if we can direct you in a way that'll help you keep all your money instead of having them taken from you. So, but anyway, I'd love to hear that story and what was happening that you got lawyers involved. It'd be kind of cool to do with that. And again, we have clients all over the world, And generally speaking, it's very few and far between that we have. I think we have a client right now that's just learning this with his new business, and so there are things that are common mistakes and things like that. But we want to make sure that that again, so that you can overcome this in the next time that you're working for a different client. So that'll be cool. But thanks for sharing with that. I look forward to talking with you. If you want to email me, we should, Michael, at some point be um, put up the email thing, like up on a thing. Let's see if we can. You know, what we can do is when we start the show, we should put the email in the bottom, and then you can always click on it. It'll come up like it's a graphic. Let's see. Um, and oh, I have to do the. Okay, that's good. You can just say that. Okay, so hey, I know who that is from Miami. Greetings. Hope you're having nice weather down there. Good old Miami. That's where I like to be in the wintertime because it's so nice down there. We were really enjoying Fort Walton Beach is up north there. What was it? Starts with F. Fort. Oh, I'm trying to think. It's south of Pompano Beach. I was at Fort Myers. I think that's what it is. Maybe that's. I'm trying to think if that's what it is. Fort Myers. But anyway, that north of Miami area is just so lovely. Even down, I like it. Even southern part. Miami's like any city. You know, the beach is nice and all that, but the city is the city, and I don't tend to care for that. But south of that in Homestead, that's just lovely down there. I like old Florida because I grew up in Orlando, and so I love old Florida. Reminds me of my childhood, you know. So good to have you on. Thank you all for being on. Be sure to like and subscribe and be a part of this. Hope some of this information was helpful. And our process, one of the things, the feedbacks we get from our clients is that this is a peaceful process. It's not a vibe. There's no fight here. We're just having things be true and correct. That's all. And so that's really where we want to be. And that's where I want you to be. So hopefully you can like and subscribe and be a part of our community, our team. We appreciate this work and we appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you next time here on Destination Freedom. Okay, take care. And I know what I need to do. Well, this is our smooth tea. Let me see if I can. We'll get the. Let's see. All right, there we go. Let's see if we'll just see if this will go. And all right, well, we'll see you next time. So I'm gonna have some exciting
To pass away, but life presents such possibilities each and every day. I heard a calling that was right for me. I prayed for strength for what's ahead of me. Show me the show me the way. The sun rose high and burnt the night away. Who stood before me was my enemy. Don't tread on me. He's come to take away my liberties. I'd rather die than be a slave to thee. Don't treat me this way. I'd rather die than be your slave. I will survive. And you feel my rage. It's not a question of being brave. I'd rather die than be your slave. It didn't matter who shot first that day. they lay dead by me.